A lot of us grew up being told the same thing. Buy a flat, pay your mortgage, retire in peace. But what if the flat itself is the retirement plan? This is the Money Talks podcast. I'm Andrea Heng. Now, whether you're thinking of moving somewhere smaller or unlocking the value of your lease, or perhaps even making room for some extra income, your HDB flat might actually be working financially harder than you realize. So today we're asking, how do you actually turn that asset into a retirement strategy? In the hot seat today, and no stranger to the Money Talks podcast, is Ismail Gafoor, Executive Chairman of PropNex's Limited. Welcome back to the podcast, Ismail.
Truly my pleasure, Andrea. Yeah, I mean, it's always feel like coming back home. And
I know. Yes, you're even more relaxed this time around. This is something that's totally in your wheelhouse, so I cannot wait to get into this conversation. You work with buyers and sellers every day. This is your life. This is your work. How often do you encounter Singaporeans who are genuinely sitting on a gold mine and they don't even realize it?
I think today I must say a huge amount of education has taken place by HDB, and because of the various schemes that are available, I must say it's lesser compared to, say, about 15, 20 years ago.
That's surprising.
No, truly. Those days when at times I don't drive, even when I take a taxi and so on, they will say that his life is difficult, the economy is not doing well, I'm likely to be retrenched. But he or she did not realize he's sitting in a pot of gold. Yeah. So just that little conversation in the 15 minutes unlocked his mind, and he got in a completely new life because everything changed.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that comes to mind when it comes to unlocking, as you said, the opportunities that an HDB flat can give you is right sizing.
Yep.
So this is exactly the situation that I am in. I'm in a 5-room flat, decaying lease. My husband and I are in our 40s. So we are at this stage now where we're about to have MOP, minimum occupation period, right? This is the point where we decide, should we sell and unlock our future retirement funds without working too hard over the next 25 years? Or do we stay and be ready for an income cut in our retirement years, right? So this is a very big consideration for many people, I think, in my age group.
Yeah.
When it comes to right sizing, when is the right time to consider moving to a smaller flat if you are living in a bigger flat?
Okay.
Or upgrading if you are living in a smaller flat? Right sizing, essentially.
Okay.
When's the right time?
Truly understand, Andre, your point here is this. When should one stop taking more liabilities, commitment, paying mortgage, and say, I call it quits and I want to just have a comfortable life and retire, and I still get some form of payout or lump sum?
Exactly.
I will give this one broad advice to anyone will be, as long as you desire to work, you must, in my view, look at real estate is an asset that will, on par while you're working or alongside you, will also work to build its capital appreciation.
Okay.
Because the thing here is at the end of the day, as long as you're working, you're getting CPF funds.
That's right.
I mean, put it this way. You have a public housing and you may have just bought it quite recently, and as you said, going to MOP 5 years. My fundamental question here is this. The property that you're staying, is it an asset or is it a decaying lease? So if the property that you're staying in a HDB has got more than 70, 80 years, fine.
Yeah.
And you're comfortable, you stay there for another 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you're fine.
Correct.
But if the property that you're staying is less than 60 years or 50 years, then there is something to be concerned about.
Right.
Because if your property is only about 50 to 55 years, and by staying there for another 10 years, while you're still working, as much as you work as hard, your property may not be working as hard as you.
That's right.
Because the asset with the decaying lease may not appreciate as much.
Right. What do we have to prepare when thinking about broaching the subject of moving to a right-sized apartment with the family? Because my parents were in this situation 25, 30 years ago. What do we do about the children's school, etc.? I mean, all these things come into play when you have a family. If it's just you and your husband or you and your spouse, it's easy enough. It's a two-man decision. But when you have multi-generational families involved, what kind of preparations mentally do we need to have on hand when we are ready to right-size?
Okay. So I will put it in perspective such that when we say right size, is someone is looking at it more towards the retirement age of past 55, 60 or 65.
Yep.
And at those period, I also tend to assume many of the children would have had their own nest elsewhere. So actually, when you assuming if you're having a 5-room or 4-room HDB, which still provide a 3 bedrooms, maybe actually be relatively empty. So right sizing may be the most appropriate thing because you don't need to upkeep the house, but decent enough for your grandchildren and children to just drop by and visit.
Yeah.
But still some people do struggle. One of the biggest challenge people tend to see when about right sizing here is some of them are emotionally affected because of, sometimes it also has got to do with ego. Is it that I'm not well off? Is it that I got constrained?
Because it's a status thing.
It's a status, right?
Yeah.
People sometimes associate with stigma. They were doing well last time, staying in an executive or on a private, and today they have downgraded.
Yeah.
So
where do I put my face?
Yeah. But I think we shouldn't focus on that because our life is about not having the biggest home but not having enough cash, right?
Yeah.
That should not be the case, right? So today I think right sizing is an option. But the beautiful thing here is this: people do have options based on policies in Singapore.
Right.
But it all goes by age.
Sure.
I mean, someone who's above 65 years, they can always opt for a lease buyback.
Yes.
Okay, we don't need to go that. Maybe later part I can explain that.
Sure.
But just not because you're asking a question, Andrea, here is this. What is the challenges of wanting to right size, right? We talk about, let's say, a little bit about the status conscious. But the second thing is also when you have to uproot from your current place, your right side neighbor, your left side, you're within the block. Unless, of course, you're buying within the same block and same thing.
Yeah, that's different. Yeah,
That's
but there's
different,
also
right?
things like my favorite coffee shop, my mini mart downstairs.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're uprooting everybody.
Yeah. So if within the same estate may not be as bad, but some people do also take this opportunity to move to a newer estate. Maybe their children are there.
Precisely.
Because based on their BTOs, they are all in Sengkang, Punggol, but you
Tengah.
have been in Tengah, yes, but you have been all over in Bedok as in.
Yes.
But then you have to also go closer towards that place.
Yeah.
So this is where things become a little bit more adjustment. But at the end of the day, I think maybe this is the right thing to do.
I agree. And this is something I am telling my parents as well because, you know, you should move closer to me. There's a grant for it as well. A lot of people don't realize that there's a grant for you to move closer to your parents, but it works the other way around as well. Parents moving closer to you. So we talked about the emotional attachment. We talked about uprooting. We also talked about the logistics. Now I want to get into the math. Does right sizing always leave you with a meaningful sum to retire on? Because there's a silver housing bonus grant that's up to $40,000. Right sizing to 2-room, 3-room, and these are some of the where some of the BTOs come into the picture, right? What if in this situation I'm moving to a place where it can finance the next flat, but I also have grants to tap on. So what's the math here?
Yeah, I think this is, if we talk about a silver bonus scheme, right? This is particularly for people who want to right size to smaller flat of 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom. And the idea here is this. In fact, it is also open to private property owners.
Oh, really?
But with an annual value of not more than 31,000.
Okay.
So if their annual value is lesser than 21,000, they get a higher amount. And then if it is annual values between 21 to 31, they get slightly lesser amount. There are a lot of people who are asset rich but cash tight.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is where the government say, okay, if you are prepared to right sizes to a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, because then you can dispose of your property, which is always in demand, right? Because a lot of new populations are younger couple one. So you free up that space for someone else and you take a smaller flat and I can give you some kind of a bonus. But there are some conditions too.
Okay.
From your sale proceeds of your existing home, home, either using your existing CPF or cash component, you have to at least put aside $60,000 in your CPF so that you will get the annuity payout throughout. And that's a good thing too.
It is.
Because we're all talking about cash flow
Correct.
management.
Yes.
Over and above, you dispose your property, you get some capital appreciation.
Correct.
And the government is prepared to give you some silver bonus schemes.
Yeah,
right?
correct.
So
And
it's
you're
very
adding
positive scheme.
adding to your CPF payouts.
Yeah.
So you have funnels of cash
Yeah.
from different areas of selling this flat, right?
Yeah. So these schemes, Andrea, is only applicable, open to only those people who are above 55 years.
Got it.
And they are very clear-minded that they are going to right size to much smaller flat.
Yes.
And this is where they are very likely to be away from the existing, probably, township or so. So there are a lot of more adjustment, but they are ready to do that.
Okay.
The alternative option is then they wait until age 65.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happens then?
That is the lease buyback scheme.
So let's talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up. The lease buyback scheme, it basically allows older flat owners, they sell a portion of their remaining lease back to HDB.
Yep.
Can you explain in the plainest language possible how this works?
Okay, let me try because it's a bit complex.
It
though.
is. It's very
Yeah.
layered.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. But on the other hand, maybe it's an easier way to put across here is this. You are staying in a HDB flat. You don't want to right size to any smaller. They say, no, I want to live in this until my last day.
And maybe the flat already is the
Yeah,
right size.
Right size. Yeah. Therefore, they said, good, if that is the case, they continue to stay there, but they can exercise this lease buyback only when they turn age 65.
Okay.
And they must hold on to the younger of the owners up to age 95.
Got it.
I mean, if I'm 65, I must, assuming there's balance 50-year lease of this.
Okay.
Property is already 50-year-old.
Right.
And I'm 65. I have to keep another 30 years.
Correct.
65 plus 30 is 95. Then I still got additional 20 years. That 20 years, I can sell it back to HDB.
When you sell it back to HDB, what does that actually mean?
Means you have a legal right as an owner of this property to stay there for another 30 years,
Got it.
up to age 95.
Right.
Then, the end of the 30 years period, the balance 20 years, HDB take back the property. You're no more the owner because they bought the last tail end of
I
the
see.
20 years.
Okay.
And because they have purchased that, they're going to give you a lump sum for that balance lease, right?
How do we calculate whether that lump sum is going to be enough?
I think last year, I remember in the first 6 months, there were more than 1,000 requests or submission for these applications for this lease buyback scheme.
Okay.
But people have to, before that, must understand their needs.
Yes.
Because if they don't opt for lease buyback scheme, they could have easily done outright sale
Yes.
and purchase.
Correct.
Okay. But the problem is outright sale and purchase, they have to usually downgrade. That is what
The point.
some
That's
people, yeah. But you have a greater flexibility, right? Because even though you have a smaller unit, but you have the full flexibility of inheritance, or you don't need to wait. How about if you happen to live beyond 95?
Yeah.
Then what happens? Then we do not know. But because actually you have to leave that premises. On the other hand, people say, no, I'm so clear-minded. After all, this is already the right size that I need.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to opt to stay there. Then they have this option of lease buyback.
Okay.
And the mere fact here is this. The only thing they get is this cash
Yes.
every month.
Correct.
So the people who are opting for this are truly who desire to have this cash.
Okay.
So whether is it for two of them, come to about 1,002 or 1,004 depending on the amount.
Sure.
And if that can carry them through to live in next 30 years, that's a decent supplement of their income.
Okay. And that is on top of the OA savings that they've been
Oh, yes.
generating throughout their last working years, right?
But one of the disadvantage here is this. For example, someone who have done a lease buyback,
Yeah.
say 6 years ago,
Okay.
he would have got certain amount.
Yeah.
And then you can't sell it in the open market. Or for that matter, you're locked in, right? Then suddenly your children decided to migrate or you wanted to shift to another place. These are the limitations. So for anybody who's going to go for lease buyback, you must be crystal clear on your objective, that I'm comfortable and I'm truly want to have this place as my last stop, and I'm happy to receive that cash on an annual basis, and therefore I want to sell back.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think we needed the clarity on lease buyback scheme because I think a lot of people are attracted by the immediate cash outlay and the fact that they don't have to worry anymore. So there are some seniors who opt for the 2-room flexi flats with shorter leases. From an investment standpoint, is this a good move? And bearing in mind that one of the downsides, I suppose, would be you don't really have an asset to hand over to your children, to the next generation, right? What do you think?
I think is for each is based on its objective. I won't say it's right or wrong.
Sure.
I have known of friends, customers, whom I have encouraged them to have a home with a shorter lease.
Okay.
Because basically at entry level, their commitment is not so high. And especially if you're single, sometimes, what are you talking about legacy planning still? You just want to live your life to be comfortable, right?
Yeah.
Rather than you want to have a 99-year lease and you're going to pay more than double versus a shorter lease based on your needs. So I think the shorter lease, smaller flexi flats are really a well thought through options given to people that caters to their objective. But obviously, if you have a family and you have the means, I would always suggest you buy a 99-year lease. Because it allows you, in terms of capital appreciation, even for yourself. Okay, whether you want to just dispose it towards the twilight years and then take the money, and even if you want to give it to charity, even you want to give it to anyone of your loved one, is still always possible because you have a complete 99 years.
And there's value to unlock from the remaining of whatever lease that you are not occupying the flat, right?
Definitely.
Okay, so there's one more option on the table here, and it's an option that I'm seeing a trend happening, and that is renting out the flat. Or even just renting out a room. This does generate a hefty amount of cash. We are increasingly dependent on foreign labor, and these people will need rooms and houses to stay in. So renting out, for people who want to stay in their homes but still want to generate income, that's an option. But is it a viable retirement strategy?
Very, very certain. Very, very certainly, I would say that. But you see, again, go back to objective. Every options have got its pluses and minuses.
Of course.
First and foremost, the key thing that you lose out in renting is your privacy.
Exactly.
Are you a person who is okay with that? Are you comfortable with strangers or someone? It could be a relative, it could be a friend. Are you comfortable with the thought and the idea that you've been staying in this home for the last umpteen years? Now you are going to co-share. You can say no, they are in the room, but they still have to go through your main door. They still have to go to the kitchen.
The common areas.
Right? So that as long as you're open to that. In fact, actually, I've known of this has been a very positive thing. Some elderly couple. In fact, this young, either university students, they become such a strong pally. In fact, they become a lookout for them.
Support system.
And also sometimes when they come back, there's a soul to talk to. Sometimes elderly people can also be very lonely.
Of course. And it's nice because to see the younger people do that, because they also forge bonds with these older people.
And you'd be surprised, Andrea. Let's say for a market rate of a room today is anything about $800, could be $700 or $900, depend on locations. And that's even without attached toilet. Attached toilet will command $1,000 and more.
Easily,
And I've known of some elderly couple who housed or rent their room at a much lower rate of $600 or $550 and so on, because these people while they were schooling and they grow up, they have created such a bond. They say it's not about money. Beyond money, I'm happy. I've had enough.
It's for the company, right?
Yeah, it's for the company. But broadly speaking, this option is another positive option. That it can generate income and your bills and so on. But there's always the other risk here is, how is it if you get a bad tenant?
Correct, because you can't pick and choose. I mean, you can to a degree, but sometimes, the stripes don't appear until later on, right?
And if you are someone who's very annoyed with cleanliness or the standards or even the habits of individual, then if it is going to annoy you, then you're going to stay in a home where you don't find peace.
Yeah.
Then there are other tenants who may not be paying on time. And based on that, you may have got some plans on your commitments and so on, right?
Yeah.
These are some of the emotional stress that you have. But you can always get the tenant to leave, but you still need to give time,
Yeah,
maybe based on the contract and agreement and so on. These are something one will have to accept, something that comes with tenancy.
Okay. Have you also seen an increase in the number of elderly people who own flats? They've decided to move in with their children, their older children, their adult children, and then renting out their whole flat. Is that something that's an option being explored by a lot of people?
Some, yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I think it is more of the support system the younger, the children require. Because rather than they every time go and up and down in commute to the place and the inconvenience, and while today in most instances both of them are working,
Yes.
they want some elderly people to just keep an eye, even though they may have a domestic helper to help them and so on. And there are such situations. But I want to just caution this for all elderly group of people. Don't ever dispose your property 100% and just think that your son or your daughter will look after you to all your years. I think because I've heard and seen and experienced the other part of it, where sometimes they become homeless and sometimes they feel their dignities and they cannot have the rights to say something.
Because they don't have a roof over their head anymore and they're obligated to their children, right?
I think as far as in Singapore, I think you can always dispose of your property.
Sure.
You can always get a right size, a shorter lease, a 35. Even if it is a one-bedroom, I think it's good to have a roof for yourself.
Yes.
But
your
you can
own
always
place.
choose to stay in every children home. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But you are with complete dignity that I can walk out if you don't treat me right.
Yeah.
But you don't need to lah. I'm not trying to say confrontational. We are a family.
No, I think it's a practical choice
Yeah.
because you still need your own home to come home to. Something to call your own.
But Andrea, the truth of the matter, many instances are not as such.
Is that because they don't, I don't know, do they do that because they don't consult their children when they do that?
No, sometimes they're too trusting, too believing, because some instances the children have got bigger dreams. They also need the down payment from the parents' disposal of the property so that they can have a better lifestyle. But when the children's family grow, the space become, then sometimes is frictions and so on. But because as parents, especially if you are lonely, I mean, some of the elderly couple, one would have passed away, then you're alone. You're also lonely, right?
Of course.
So you are so trusting, but I won't say I mean, this is a very grey area.
Of course. It's situational.
Because some people may say, hey, I'm not saying the right thing because I will love my mom. Good, I'm happy for that.
But things change.
Don't take chances.
Yeah, I think things can change. The what ifs, I think, is what you're talking about.
But you can have the smallest, a balanced 30-year lease, one bedroom studio apartment.
You don't need a whole lot.
Yeah, you don't need, you just have it one.
Yeah?
Yeah, but you still going to stay at your parents' place.
Yeah, that's true. I think these are very, very practical tips. So let's end off the conversation with one final piece of advice here, Ismail. For those listening or watching us right now, considering how they can leverage their home for their retirement as part of their retirement plan, what is your final word of advice?
I think I will always say that I believe in the term we use, building wealth and delayed gratification. And when I say that if anyone who has a capacity to work, while we're working so hard and the money goes to CPF, don't take for granted the property is always an asset. The asset could turn to be a liability because of locations or, for that matter, decay in lease balance. One should always take a proactive because it is your money, your CPF. So as long as you're working, it is always okay to buy within your means a bigger, better property, because when the time is right, you can right-size it.
Yes.
So do your sums, speak to someone who's really professional with your interest at heart
Yes.
and do the right thing.
And be clear about your objectives. I think that was one big takeaway that you reminded us of
Yeah.
throughout the conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Truly,
sitting here with
truly
us.
my pleasure. And I hope the listeners truly benefit.
Yeah, I hope so too. I'm sure they will. And you've certainly shown us, the way to look at our HDB flat in a completely different light. So thank you so much. And thank you, our Money Talks community, for tuning in. I want to leave you with a question now. Has a thought of right-sizing or unlocking your flat's value crossed your mind like it has for me? I have a conversation to have with my husband after this as well. What's holding you back, right, from doing this? Or what is going to make you take that leap? Let us know in the comment section wherever you're listening to us from. You can also email us directly at cnapodcasts@mediacorp.com.sg. Here with Ismail, I'm Andrea Heng. Thank you so much for listening and watching here on the Money Talks podcast.